We're going to talk about user interfaces, kind of at a high level, more of a very non-technical level today, and non-specific as well. But just in general, building GUIs. Have the subroutine. No, I haven't graded any of the past 4 activities yet. Hopefully, I'll be able to get to that sometime soon. But 116 is kind of in crisis right now, so that is taking up a lot of my attention. And again, as long as I open your activity and I see, 45 minutes ish or more of work, of effort, you're going to get the point. I don't want you sweating the activities. You should sweat the end of sprint demos. Those are important. Don't sweat the activities. As long as you're trying, if you're clearly not trying at all, and you're just like, oh, Jesse said don't sweat it, so I'm just going to submit whatever, 5 minutes of work, then you're not going to get credit. But as long as you're trying, as long as you're putting in an honest effort, you're good. I think it would make more people go into Physics Engine. Yeah, if I did the Mario game, I think so too. I'll try it. This will be the last 116 thing I talk about. But I think if I did that, I might even scrap the rhyming dictionary. Because a lot of students do rhyming dictionary just because it's the easier one, which is, it is what it is, I guess. But it's hurting those students down the road. I would assume any student struggling right now probably has done rhyming dictionary instead of Physics Engine, and they just, denied themselves that learning opportunity that Physics Engine offers because they wanted their life to be a little easier. So if I made Physics Engine even more exciting like that, and probably just get rid of rhyming dictionary entirely, I think would be the move to make. Maybe even add features to Physics Engine. I don't know. That's stuff to think about. I jump pretty weird, so that might be something to code. Yeah, slides. We're back to slides. We had 4 days of activities. We're back to slides. Yeah, Mario's jump is a huge, like, getting Mario's jump to feel satisfying is I'm sure they spent more than months on it by now. Maybe months on just Mario 1. They probably spent months. But over the course of Mario's lifetime and all the different games, I mean, they probably have, years, I guess would be the next step. Lots of effort into that jump. When they made Mario 64, I heard one of the major goals of that was to just go into a blank level, no enemies, no coins, 1-ups, or nothing. And it should be fun to go in there and just control Mario. That was one of their goals. I think they got that too. How much time me and everyone, when we first played that game, just spent jumping around outside of the castle before even going into a level. It's just so fun to control Mario. And that doesn't just happen. That doesn't just fall into place. Making the controls... This is actually related to today's topic. I'm not even off track here. To make the controls feel good, that user interface. Let's relate it directly. To get that interface to feel good, that it's intuitive, it's satisfying, it just feels good to control Mario in those games. But that doesn't just happen. That takes tons of effort, lots of user testing. Related to that also, users got very disoriented when they first went to 3D because Mario 64 is like the big first 3D platformer. Nobody knew how to do this yet. So it took the team a lot of play testing to be able to figure out how to get this right. And one of the things they noticed is that it was very disorienting to figure out where Mario actually was. And their solution to this was actually extremely simple once they got the idea. I'm sure it took forever to get the idea. But the idea was to just add a drop shadow. Have a shadow that's directly below Mario. Don't worry about proper lighting and everything to get a realistic shadow. Just have a drop shadow that's always directly below Mario. So even when you're in the air, you know where you are in relation to the ground. And that just fixed so much that it made it so much easier. Easier to control Mario and realize where you were in this 3D space. If you write good code, you shouldn't need many tests. Yeah, I mean, so you're not entirely wrong. In this course, we do require tests, though. So in this course, at least, you're going to form strong opinions about tests, one way or the other. Mario Bros. Jump. Oh, Mario Bros. 1 jump does not feel good. Yeah, I tend to agree with that, especially compared to other Marios. Like, by the time they got to Mario 3, that jump felt great. But the Mario 1, sometimes you just don't have the momentum you expect to have. And turning around midair, you can't really go back, which, is more realistic. You can't turn around in midair in real life. But for a video game, it makes it really tough to control. Yeah, with Mario, of course, that's why it's in my mind, too. Mario 35, whoop whoop, hype. They did change the physics just a little bit in Mario 35. But it's still quite faithful, so you have those frustrations still. The number of times I was jumped like 1 pixel too early thinking of Mario 35, 1 pixel too early, and I wasn't at running speed and just had this really pansy jump and right into the hole. There goes my game. All those coins I collected, gone. 1 pixel later, I would have been at running speed, and I would have leapt freaking halfway to the moon. But that, that one little boundary between walking and running in that game, it's frustrating. Mario World versus Mario 3. I don't know. I like Mario 3. I can't, not going to apologize for that. But Mario World, they were both big parts of my childhood. But Mario 3 was like the first really big main Mario. Mario 1 was fine and all, but it was just too tough, and they didn't have the controls down like the jump that I was just talking about. And Mario 2 was fun and all. It wasn't really a Mario game, but it was still fun. Mario 3 was the first one that really nailed it. And Mario World was right up there. But there's something, I don't know, something about Mario 3's charm that just hits me a little better. Mario. With the modding community, looks like Mario World is just a lot better for modding. I wish Mario 3 was. Wish there was more out there. Anyway, this is not what we're supposed to be talking about. So let's talk about GUIs. After lecture, I'll talk about Mario for a while, I guess. So we want to talk about user interfaces and how the clients, the users, are going to interact with your software. And I'd argue this is the most important part of your software when you're releasing software to actual using, especially paying customers. So your goal in software engineering is to solve the client's problem. That's the number one goal. It's why you're going to get paid. It's why you're going to get a nice lucrative job, because there's somebody out there who's going to use the software you create, and there's some way to get money. Even if they're not paying you directly, maybe you work for Google and you make their products better and people use those products, and then Google gets more ad revenue at some point, whatever it is. Can I make a podcast where I just talk about cool things? After lecture, just ask me. Not starting no podcast. Unless I start getting thousands of viewers after each lecture when I just talk about rambling about stuff. But there's no need to at this point. So this is why they give you money. And if you build something that doesn't show up on the UI, who cares? It's not there. It doesn't exist. If going to the Google example, if they had Google search, it existed. All the code was great, but there was no search box on Google's homepage. It doesn't make it to the UI. It might as well not exist. And then if Google just never put that on their UI, they wouldn't be the company that we know them as today. They never would have gained traction and became so popular. It has to be on your UI. Any feature you build, if it doesn't make it to your UI, it might as well not exist. This is the most important thing, because no matter what you build, it's got to be on there. It has to be usable by the user. The only way you're doing that is putting it on your UI. Usually GUIs these days, but I'll use UI for sure. And for those of you who don't know, GUI, Graphical User Interface, GUI, And UI, user interface. So to mean, if you have a command line interface or any other interface. If you have non-end users, maybe your UI is a web API, a RESTful API. But however your users are interacting with your software is the UI. So any information not on the UI might as well not exist. And you don't want to put too much information on there either. So any details that are not important to the user, get it off your UI. It doesn't need to be there. That's just going to confuse and frustrate your end users. So when you're designing this, ask yourself these 3 questions. What problem is being solved? Because that better be very visible to your users. What is necessary to solve the problem? And what makes it obvious that the problem is solved? So your end UI design needs to have good answers for these three questions. Kobe. He doesn't want to. He's very distracted. He's barking at something out the window. And he's gone. But not today. It's just not in the cards today. So the user, through your user stories and all writing that, they're going to decide what the interface needs, and the interface is going to guide them when they're using your software. So if you have a bad interface, your users, if they can, they're going to build their own things. I actually was just talking about earlier today for Piazza, there are some things that I do not like about that interface. One of the big things is it only shows your name without your email or your UBIT. So I wrote a browser extension that actually adds your UBIT to each of your posts, so I can know exactly, not necessarily know exactly who it is. Sometimes y'all have like a very common first name and you only display your first name on Piazza, so I don't know really who you are at first glance. But also it makes it really easy to cross-reference things. If you're asking, hey, I'm having trouble with this lecture question, especially if it's a private post, like, hey, I'm having trouble with this lecture question, I'm not getting credit, what the hell's going on? In 1.16 anyway, I cut and paste their username, cut it from Piazza, paste it in Autolab, pull up their submission, and I figure out exactly what's going on, and I can help them out. But if it's just their name, like, I can't really do much for that. So sometimes your users will fix things for you. This entry CE, that doesn't tell me anything. Where am I going? Downtown. You're going downtown. Users fix this for them, for this horrible interface. If you're building your interface too developer-centric, this is a common mistake. You just assume everybody knows the things that developers know. This is oftentimes a very false assumption. Most people using most software are not developers. I mean, unless your end user is actually a developer, you can get away with a little bit more. IDEs, for example, use a lot of kind of cryptic UI stuff, but it makes sense to developers. I know the up arrow is going to be the button that I use to push to my remote repository. Like, I just expect that. But if your users are not expecting these things, like, I don't even know what this should do. Is that something about Windows? Like, I honestly don't even know what this could be. The stop, the hand with the... I honestly don't know what these ones could be. This is obviously mute, but am I currently muted or not? Do I push that to mute or unmute? And the arrow, of course, that's just so nondescript. 2 arrows here. What does that even do? I would say this isn't even developer-centric, unless I'm just not privy to what these symbols all mean. Also, this, I looked for so long, like, I still don't know what link they're talking about. Click the link to get started. I'm guessing the whole thing is a link, maybe. But if I'm a user, what if I just click this link and click the down button? Enter your date of birth, where you don't have that. Date pickers are, by the way, one of the really picky, no pun intended there, but picky things. I'm pretty picky about my date pickers. This one is just awful. It just gives you no options. The ones with drop downs are, okay, until you get to the year. You're dropping down the year and picking, scrolling and picking. It's not the worst. I like the ones that pull up a calendar depending on what they're asking for. I've also seen specifically with date of birth, a date of birth date picker that initializes to the current day. So its best guess of how old I am is 0 minutes. Like, that's not, at least try to attempt to make something close. But anyway, I could rant about UI for a long time of bad examples, and I see y'all doing that in chat. I like it. So here's some, bad designs. Where's the link? Where do I even click? Date picker. Especially if this is initializes at 46, unless you expect that to be your average age of your user base. Making us click this and not being able to enter a number, bad. Bad design. Nice UI design are usually the companies these days that are that'll start to thrive. If you have a good UI, it goes a long way. You can even have some kind of crappy other aspects to your. I'm not speaking of Nest directly here, but even if some other parts of your product are crappy, if you have a nice UI, a nice design, and it's easy to control and easy to understand how to control it, you're gonna start making sales. Nest, very easy. I'm using it as a good example and saying it's so easy to read, and I've already looked at it too, and I'm still like, okay. You know what? Honestly, I can't read this. Is it current? It must currently be 68, and it's heating, so it's getting even hotter. But what's the 65? To be honest, I can't even read this one. But I'm sure it makes sense to the user, but it's not the best example, I guess. It looks pretty. I will give it that. Oh, it's set to 68, but that's kind of misleading. If I look in it, I see 68. Wouldn't I think the current temperature? Like I obviously did. I would think that the current temperature is 68. Okay, but that makes sense. So it's set to 68. It's currently 65, so it's heating to get up to 65. Okay, I'll give them that. But I'll take some points off for them for, since it's not. I guess the big number, being what it's set to. You know what? Yeah, I'll give them that. Because normally the numbers are going to be the same if everything's working right. This is just after a user increased the temperature. So right after they increase the temperature, they obviously know which number is which because it's the one that just changed when they changed it. So I'll give them that. I'll keep it as a good UI example. 404, if you're ever just giving an error code, an HTML error code on your websites, you're wrong. Like, give your users more information. 404 error, that means the page doesn't exist. Do you want to learn more? Especially since this is Code Academy, you're probably there to learn things anyway. Would you like to learn more about HTTP error codes? If this just said 404 or even 404 error, that doesn't tell the user anything. What does that mean? Okay, the page doesn't exist. I gotcha. The Nest one is better than in the pick because there's an animation. Oh, well, if I actually was working with it, where the dial moves, yeah. So a few things to do when you're designing a GUI. Once you have a GUI designed and everything, make sure you're testing it well. So this can be tricky to do, but pretend that you know nothing about the app. Pretend that you're a new user just sitting down at this app for the first time and walk through how your UI feels to you. How easy is it to use? How intuitive is it, especially? And would you know what to do if you weren't the developer of this project? Would you be able to figure all that out? So figure out how to make your GUI intuitive or your UI intuitive so that even a brand new user can figure it out. If there's a whole bunch of jargon in there and a whole bunch of stuff that only you and your team are going to understand, when you finally release this thing to end users, it's not going to be any good. They're not going to know what to do. And then you're going to have to sit there and train them and tell them everything that they need to do. Or worse, they just don't use your product. So, and how much the user has to work. If they're not working at all, if your UI is just doing everything for them, it depends what your product is. I would argue that that's a great thing if they don't have to pay attention at all. Wait, am I... Yeah, well, if it doesn't take me any time to understand, why would this be so high up? Anyway, but if you're on the other side of this, we can all agree that that's awful. If it takes somebody a long time to understand and they really have to focus on your interface itself, in trying to figure out how to get your interface to do what it's supposed to do, that's just no good. You've used interfaces like that before. I promised myself I'd pick on the Hub and UB Learns today, so Hub and UB Learns, you've used those. They suck. They're terrible. You have to think so much about the interface because the interface gets in your way so much and so often that you're constantly having to pay attention to the interface itself. I'm sure you have other examples that you've had to use. I like those two because we've all had to use them, and they're awful. So once you get up in here, your app is terrible. Don't rethink your design, rethink your user interface. And don't make your users think too hard. Is the big point there. I'm gonna skip past that. You can download the slides and read the quote if you want. You know what? Why not? The more condensed the meaning, the more striking. The more spread the meaning, the less impressive. Actually, I do have something to say about this. A lot of books these days. I listen to a lot of audiobooks on Audible. #not sponsored. So I'm not sponsored, but I do listen to a lot of audiobooks, and a lot of books these days are just filled with so much crap and so much repetition. I feel like the authors feel like they need to fill up a whole book to justify selling a book, when really they have like 5 pages of points that they want to make. A lot of books, I can read the top review. Like after I read the book, I'll go back and read the top review, and that review will have the complete condensed point of the book in it. Sometimes when you have really good reviewers on a book. Well, the entire point of the book summarized in like 3 paragraphs. And it comes across just as well as listening to the entire book does. And I wonder why they have so much fluff and stuff. But the more you spread across that meeting, the less impressive it is. Blog posts as well. They spread things out. They give you like this background. Recipes for some reason these days. I don't know why they do that, but they give their whole life story before telling you how to cook the meal. It's crazy, but I wish things were more condensed these days. And just boil things down to what they actually need to be. I'm sure at least a few of you. I think a lot of my material is kind of like that, but I'm sure at least a few of you are thinking I'm a hypocrite when I say that. You're entitled to your opinion, I guess. But I think things are fairly boiled down. In 116 especially, they could be fluffed up a bit more with more examples. But I run out of time in the semester. Anyway, so never think that your user is just going to intuit what they're supposed to do. Sometimes they're not going to be able to figure it out. Be very clear. Be more descriptive if you have to. You have to be forthright with them. User equals idiot. Not every user is going to be an idiot, but you have to make your user interfaces foolproof. Because when you have enough users, so I know this just from putting courses out there to hundreds of students. If there's anything that could possibly be misinterpreted, at least one person is going to misinterpret it. Doesn't necessarily mean that person is an idiot, but if you assume all of your users are idiots, it's going to help you out. It's going to help you avoid those mistakes. Because even if it's something that a reasonably intelligent computer science student, in this example, has a 1% chance, a 99% chance of understanding correctly, but a 1% chance of misunderstanding, and I've got a class of 400, well, guess what? 4 students just misunderstood that thing. And now, I'm screwed. But if you assume they're all idiots, or more accurately, just assume that some of your users are going to hit those low percentage misunderstandings and build your interface to be able to help them out. Like how many, for example, we just had that barrage of 4 activities. On every activity, I put submit as a PDF, and I put it with asterisks and bold font. Not less than 100% of the submissions were PDFs. Like, it doesn't mean those students are idiots, but there's that small percentage chance that somebody's gonna see this big blaring text that says submit a PDF and not do that. You got to be really in their faces, even when you're in their faces about it. You're still gonna miss some people. So for full, we don't have this feature in Autolab, but for full understanding, I should have a notification when you go to submit that says, hey, this assignment requires a PDF. Make sure you're uploading a PDF. Or even better, hey, it looks like you didn't upload a PDF. WTF, mate. Maybe you should make a PDF, like the instructions say. So that would be even better user interface, user design. But this is a good one. When you go to save, sometimes it's not super clear what to do. This one is very clear. Save the image and then close it. Discard the unsaved changes, or go back and make more edits. Very clear, very explicit. I know what's going to happen if I choose one of these, when I choose one of these 3 options. Or reject. So I put on those because I know somebody would mess it up. So I put half credit. I'm going to give them half credit for non-PDFs. Because if somebody puts a lot of work into it, I don't just want to give them no credit just because they messed up the interface, but of the protocol of how to submit. But I did say half credit, at most half credit for that. Assume your users are business majors. Hey, let's go easy on them. So I don't know if I went on my rant on Friday, but I was careful not to pick on the business majors themselves. I mean, they're just doing their thing. But the School of Management I was picking on. I was careful to make that. We don't want to get into the case where we're picking on students. Business majors are fine. They just know what they're getting into. They want an easy major, and they want to, probably spend their time partying and socializing. I can agree, idiot. I mean, it's just not what they're trying. I mean, if they applied themselves, but they're business majors because they don't want to apply themselves. They want to do other things other than studying and schoolwork. And that's fine. That's their choice. Let's not get Harloff in trouble. I'll get in trouble for a lot of other things before this one. All right. I didn't pick on them. I just said they made a choice that they don't want to apply themselves. I don't see them arguing with that. By and large, there are business majors who want to be entrepreneurs. So let me clarify, just in case that one business major is listening. There are business majors who want to be entrepreneurs, want to start their own businesses. They have tons of ambition and stuff. And I'd imagine they're just as pissed off as I am at the School of Management for not covering more content and more useful content. There are some students who made it there who were just like, wait, this is it? This is all you're going to show me? Come on, man. Like, I was craving a lot more when I went there. I wanted a lot more real, useful, applicable content. I wanted more examples. Like, we took a marketing class, and there were very few actual real-life examples where we analyzed existing marketing campaigns, and I don't know. That's not what we're here to talk about. Maybe I can relate that to UI, but I got some slides to get through. So make things very specific. This example, there's question 2 and question 3 behind here, and it's, the question and answer are related. But once you click this drop-down box, if you forget or you didn't look and see that there are 2 other questions, it really looks like you have a question with 3 answers that you're supposed to pick. And for some of these, what is the name of your favorite pet? Am I supposed to have 3 answers for that? It makes it a little confusing. So make sure that when you go through your interfaces and you use these things for yourself as a user, make sure you don't have things like this where it's just not very clear at all points of time what information is being conveyed and what you're asking them to input in this case. So let's take a look at this chart. we have three kind of different types of apps, if you want to call it that. The app that just completely sucks, an app that's pretty good, perfectly fine, and the viral app that's going to go nuts. So the time that a user spends using your program, as they use your program more, how are they feeling about your program? Well, every program we're going to start off hating it, and hopefully if the interface is very intuitive, we're going to quickly learn how that app works, get past what Dr. Hertz lovingly calls the suck threshold. We're going to get past this and get to the point where it doesn't suck to use that program anymore. We know where the buttons are, we can navigate the program, and we can actually use it to get stuff done. So our first goal is to very quickly get past this threshold, and users are perfectly capable of using our software for its intended purpose at this point, after they've used the program for a little bit. Once they use it for even more, our goal is to get them past this passion threshold where they're actually excited and happy to use our software. They're getting things done, they're being more productive, or whatever they're using the app for. Very happy with it. In terms of video games, this is I would say this is learning the controls, and if the controls are not satisfying, you're going to stay down here. If the controls are satisfying, you're going to get in this area, and if the game is very exhilarating, it's very satisfying and fantastic to use the controls, like Mario 3 we were talking about earlier. That game's I don't even know how old. Mario 1's 35 years now with Mario 35. It's got to be 30. How long did it take between the two? Like 30 years old, we'll say. And we're still talking about it. That game definitely got over the passion threshold, and it's a pleasure just to control Mario and play the game. It's a very fun game. Objectively, fight me. It's a fun game. If you get your app up here, you're making bank. So you can find out quite a bit just by using your own interface. Pretend you're the user, go through your interface, and try to get all the jargon and all the miscommunication out of there. But it's only going to get you so far. The best thing to do is get actual users involved as often and as early as you can. Get them using your app and get that feedback. That is the most valuable feedback you're going to get, is the feedback from actual users who have not been part of the development process, who have not spent 40 hours a week for the past couple of months thinking about this app and working on it. Somebody who just gave you money and then they showed back up, or even somebody who didn't give you money, somebody who works for the person who gave you money, whoever it's going to be, who is your end user. Have them use your app and have them tell you what's up. And whatever feedback they give you, apply it, update, and call in preferably different users and have them give you more feedback. That's the best thing. If you're I don't even think that's what I was supposed to be saying on this slide. But make sure that that first point of very first, I went off slide a bit there. But when they first sit down to use your app, make sure there's something for them to do immediately that's immediately apparent. Thinking of games again. I'm thinking of games today, but in 88, so 32 years. At least in Japan, in 30 years. Oh, it is like 30 exactly in America. Thinking of games again. If you play a game with a very long opening cutscene, for me, I lose interest. I won't even play those games these days because I got better things to do. But as opposed to games that throw you in the action immediately, they throw you right in. You're playing, and you have actions to take right away. That's going to get users more involved in the app than that. And Super Mario Sunshine, I still haven't played that. They got the 3D Mario thing out now, but they want $60 for 3 old games that I haven't played Sunshine, but I played the crap out of the other two, Galaxy and 64. $60 just to play Sunshine? I don't think so. But I did try to start Final Fantasy VIII recently. It was 50% off on the Switch, so I'm like, whatever, I haven't played this one yet either. So I downloaded that, And it starts you off in a literal classroom. You know how exciting that is. A literal classroom with people explaining some of the mechanics of the game and some of the backstory. And it goes into a tutorial on how to use all the mechanics of the game. It took forever just to get to the first battle, and by the time I got there, I was sick of it, and I haven't played the game since. And as opposed to like Final Fantasy VII, very first thing, you see Cloud, he jumps off a train, the battle music's playing, you're in a fight with guards, like stuff's happening, you blow up a reactor within a few minutes of the game, stuff happens quick, and you're involved, and then you're invested, like, okay, this is happening, I'm playing this game, and it's exciting. Get them invested early, give the user something to do right away, and get them invested. Test. I don't know if I have to talk about this one again. Oh yeah, the over the phone test though. I do want to emphasize for the first time. Your UI should be intuitive as possible. And one good test of this, first of all, if you need to tell the user anything, your design is not intuitive. Ask yourself this, if your testers need clarification on anything at all, are you going to commit to being there for every single end user of this product? Be there training them and telling them the same thing? I would guess not. Unless you have like 2 users, if it's very specialized software just for a few people to use. Odds are you're going to want more people using this. If you have an app that's going to go out to 1,000 people, are you going to explain to every one of them, this is how it works? Are you going to hire trainers to go out and train all of them? No, it's not going to happen. So I would argue that's the point you should be at. At the very least, you should be able to pass this over the phone test. You should be able to help somebody through the interface without seeing their screen. There's the over the phone test where if you're on the phone with somebody, no video chat, and they're using the interface, you should be able to walk them through how to use this interface. If you can't even do that, your interface is terrible. Start over. And I haven't played the FF7 remake yet. My problem is I don't have a PS4, and I don't have a ton of time. So that's not going to happen anytime soon. Yeah, and there are different types of intuitiveness. You got to understand your user. Who are you building this for? Are you building it for the experts? Are you building it for the beginners? Are you trying to capture both groups? Because that can be tough. What are you going for? Those are all things for each specific project you have to ask yourself. Who's my intended user? Yeah, expert users might prefer command line. Yeah. If that's the case, I mean, and you know that's who you're building it for, go ahead and build a command line interface. So the over the phone test, for a student, I would argue that Autolab passes this test. If a student is trying to make a submission, affirm that you didn't cheat and click submit. For an instructor, this is a bit tougher. I'm walking through somebody, and I've had to do this usually over email, walking through another instructor on how to set up assignments and things like that. It's a little tougher, but I'm usually able to get through it over email. But admin options, you click on this, and it does drop down a new list, so that can be confusing at first. CA options is another list that drops down, and then it looks just like options. Like options is a menu that's closed up. If somebody's never seen that before, and I say click on admin options, and they don't literally click on admin options, it could be tougher. So I'd give it a questionable for talking through other instructors. Yeah, an arrow to the right of admin options would help. And I'll borrow J.M. Lacey's comment here, is anybody who's using Autolab from the instructor side should be more of an expert user. They're at the point of their careers where they're teaching computer science. I expect them to be pretty technically inclined. So I can get away with that. The student side, I can't get away with that. They're the more beginner users. But to submit an assignment, it's pretty intuitive. That side of it's pretty easy to use. But yeah, small gray arrow. That shows it's a drop down. Yeah, you're right. That would be... I agree. Maybe that's something we'd have to add. Is it lost because my boy? I don't think we should go into extent of calling the users idiots. Based on Don Norman saying there are no bad users, that's bad designers. Your thoughts? I agree. I'll agree with that. So the point of this slide, I mean, this is more for theatrics. I mean, nobody's actually saying your users are idiots. It's just for shock value. And look, it's got y'all engaged in the lecture, so success. There are no bad users, just bad designers. That's what this slide is telling you. It's saying assume that your users are idiots and use that to push yourself to be a better designer. So if there are no bad users, well, I guess it doesn't fit to the quote directly, but I'm encouraging you to be a better designer. Design better intuitive UIs. And then you don't have to blame your users. If your users can't figure out something, like nowhere in here was I ever saying your users are idiots, so just blame the user. That's not the point of this slide. I'm saying assume your users are idiots and be a better designer, because you cannot blame your user. Your user is never at fault. I mean, well, maybe that's a bit too strong of a statement, but a user is never at fault for your UI design. You need a better design. That's the point of that slide. So yeah, I absolutely agree. No bad users, bad design. And Google, probably the ultimate good design passes the over the phone test. There's a box, click it and start typing, and then either hit enter or click the search. The I'm feeling lucky, maybe a little less intuitive, but pretty clear. Anybody who's computer literate can figure out how to use Google. And that's another thing of why Google has become so successful. There were a lot of competing search engines back in the day, back before Google started, and we had to choose which one of these, options to choose. Google came along, and they had great, their search results were better than the rest as well. But honestly, I might not have ever tried it. I mean, eventually I would have once they dominated the market. But if a lot of people felt like me, we might not have ever tried it if their interface didn't look like this. So at the time, if you go to like Yahoo, even today, it's just filled with clutter and crap. And I don't want to be bombarded with all of that crap every time I want to make a search. Google, it's just Google. It's just, hey, you're here to make a search. Here's a box for you. Even if, hell, we can go there right now. Like if I go to Yahoo expecting to make a search, look at all this crap. I don't want any of that. I don't want to be bombarded with all this information that I did not request. Google, intuitive, you're here to search. Here's your search box. And that's still what Google is today. They have a little bit extra. They have the login information at the top and sometimes a doodle. It's the same. It's the same thing that it's always been. And this clean, sleek, and most search engines were the same way at the time. It was just all clutter because they wanted you to click links. Search is very unintuitive from a business perspective because your goal of a website is typically to keep users at your website, which is what Yahoo is still doing today. You're there to make a search, but they'd much rather you click on any of those links because that's how they're going to make money. Google says, screw that, you're here to search, here's your search, and they're exactly directing traffic away from themselves. Of course, Google's found out how to monetize the crap out of that, and they've become rich since then. But at the beginning, it was just a search with no ad revenue, nothing. Anyway, but that's why a big part of why Google is what it is today. That's the reason why as soon as Google came out, I'm like, oh, this is my only search engine now because you're just giving me search. Very good UI. I came for the UI, I stayed for the search results. I believe most people did the same thing. We kind of talked about this, but making sure everything that you build shows up on your GUI. We're getting towards the end, and I have more slides, so let me get... So once you build your GUI, and you're testing just your GUI, like think Sprint 1 submissions, if you're showing that Sprint 1 to an actual client, this is something I've mentioned before, but it's definitely worth repeating now. When you show that to the client, they're going to assume that your app is done, depending on your client, of course. But they're likely to assume that the app is done, or at least almost done, because everything that they're going to see and interact with is there. So if everything that they see is there, why wouldn't they think that it's done? And they'll click a button, they'll be like, oh, this doesn't quite work. And you'd be like, yeah, we didn't set up the database or build the backend or any of that stuff. All that's going to go over their head. They're going to think, oh, they just got a little bit of more work to do, and then it's going to be done. Even though you might have like 5 to 10% of the project actually done. So there are ways to trick your clients. This just given different styling to the page and make it look like a rough draft, just to kind of make sure that it reflects kind of the state of the project. Feel free to use this or not. I don't know how much I would recommend actually doing this, but at any rate, you do have to communicate to your user that, hey, this is just an interface test. We don't have all the functionality done on the back end. If you're showing demos early and often, as you should be, at least according to Scrum and Agile. Or you have Waterfall, and that doesn't apply if you're using that. So once you're past the suck threshold, now we want to try to get up to this passion threshold. How do we get up there? So if some of your clients are going to use their program if they have to, like there's some software that you just have to use. If it's business software, the managers and executives, they paid you to build the software, and then they just tell their employees that you have to use this because this is the software we paid for. So sometimes they have to use it, but they might not like using it, and this is a bad spot to be in. This is where Hub and UB are. Like, we have to use it. We have no choice. There's no other option. Specifically SUNY tells us that we have to use this. So how do we get them to love using our program? How do we get to the point where users are passionate about using our programs? And a few tips here. Have everything react and interact in a very comfortable, common way. A lot of this means stealing ideas from other websites. Maybe that's not the best way to phrase it, but there are a lot of common interface practices that are out there. Sticking to those common practices is a good way to make sure that the users are comfortable using your software. Like, we've gotten to the point where if somebody sees an icon of a 3.5-inch floppy disk, they know that they click that to save their work. So things like that. Just use that. Just do the same thing. It's already established. Everybody's already used to it. Just use the same thing. Don't say, you know what, 3.5-inch floppies are out of disks. I'm gonna have my icon be a CD drive that says RW on it. For a read and writable CD drive that they can read and write to. No, that's just don't do it. Or I'm gonna have a USB stick there because that's how we save things these days. Or if you're saving something on physical media, don't. Or, well, actually they're saving to their hard drive, so let me show an actual image of a hard drive. Like, don't overthink it. Just stick with what people already know. Having kind of your things for expert users that can speed up all their common tasks. Have the way for, it kind of goes to the comment earlier, how do you design for expert and beginner? Having shortcuts for your common tasks is a way to entice those expert users without bogging down the beginner users, since they don't have to use the shortcuts. Including Easter eggs can always help if you have fun little nuggets of information for people to find on their own. And making sure that all the user actions are going to have predictable outcomes in all situations. We're out of time, so let me click through these and make sure any of the big points I wanted to hit are in here. For your having those shortcuts really helps. If you have a program that you've used for a long time, and then you start learning the keyboard shortcuts for that program, goes a long way in getting used to that passion level. And then they start, depending on what the app is, they might start advertising for you and getting more customers into the app. Or if you don't have those, maybe they like using the software, but they just kind of fall out of it over time. I think of IDEs when I think of this, like all the keyboard shortcuts for an IDE. If those don't exist, you might just go to a different IDE after a while. But if they do exist, you can do a lot of stuff really quickly. And yeah, don't change interfaces. Oh my goodness. We see this all the time. A popular website will change their interface, and no matter what, even if it's the best change ever, and it makes the site so much more usable, I will be part of it, but people will complain to no end about it until they get used to the new interface. Like, just don't put people through that. Changing the interface is a horrible thing to put your users through. Even if it is objectively for the better and objectively a better interface, if you picked an interface, stick with it. Frickin' GitHub just changed their interface around recently, and I'm still trying to find all the things that I need. Finding the commits. I just want a list of the commits. And I'm getting used to where it is now, but it's not, it's just not where I expect it to be. And it just frustrates me. And now it's painful every time I go to GitHub. It's painful to do anything because I'm still getting used to this new interface. Frustrating. The hub redesign, yeah. And UB Learns did their redesign to Super Omega Ultra, whatever the hell they call it. Oh, it's awful. I always click the wrong X in UB Learns now. I'm just trying to close the current screen, and I click the X, which closes the entire course, because I was in a window, which is a sub-window of a sub... Oh, my goodness. It's... Somehow they made the interface even worse. I don't know how they did that. Anyway. So, don't move things around, but if you got to make changes just to direct the user's focus. So this slide, I'm not going to change anything, but I can direct your focus. These aesthetic changes, fine, but don't move things around. Don't move around the elements, because that's going to just frustrate people. And I'll let you, I think this is pretty much the last slide, right? And then you make bank.